From Eyewitness News, this is Newsmakers.
This week on Newsmakers, our final installment of our General Assembly debates. A contentious campaign battle in Burrillville for state representative. The race got heated early over the issue of redistricting in this relatively conservative area. Republicans charging Democrats with gerrymandering. Joining us in studio, Democratic incumbent state representative Cale Keable has one term in the General Assembly under his belt. A Harvard grad, he's a litigation attorney. Republican challenger Don Fox has been here before, losing to Keable 2 years ago by less than 200 votes. He's a small businessman who owns and operates a clothing design and wholesale company. Keable, Fox, head-to-head in this campaign 2012 debate on Newsmakers. Good morning. Welcome to Newsmakers. I'm Tim White. I will be moderating this debate and asking questions along with our panel, WPRI.com reporter Ted Nesi and political reporter for Rhode Island Public Radio, Ian Donis. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Gentlemen, thank you for joining us for our final debate in this series. We do appreciate your time, and we're going to start with a simple opening question. I will give you each 30 seconds to respond on this question, and we'll start with the incumbent. Mr. Keable, why should voters re-elect you as state representative?
Thank you, Tim, for having me here today. I haven't been in this studio since the 8th grade when I represented Burrillville Middle School in the Kids Quiz show. But,
welcome back.
It's important because I was born and raised in Burrillville, and I have deep roots there. My family's been in town for 5 generations, and for 5 generations, the Burrivilles have called Burrillville home, in good times and in bad. And if I'm elected to a second term, I will continue to be a strong voice for the people of Burrillville and Gloucester. It's the least I can do. They've always been there for me.
Thank you, Mr. Keable. Now, Mr. Fox, why should voters elect you to state representative?
Well, Tim, in the last 4 months, I've knocked on over 3,000 doors in our district. And when people have taken the time to chat with me, I've asked them one key question. Is Rhode Island better off now than it was 2, 5, 10, or 20 years ago? And overwhelmingly, the answer is no, it's not. So I'm asking the people of Burrillville to send a representative to Providence who's going to represent the taxpayer and the business owners in this state, not the special interests. And I hope they'll give me that opportunity.
Thank you, Mr. Fox. All right, let's dive right into the question here, gentlemen. And Mr. Fox, we're going to start with you. I want to give you an opportunity to respond to some of the negative ads that have been placed in a local flyer in your area. For the people at home who don't know, one of them shows a tag from one of the garments that you sell.
Sure.
And it says, quote, made in China. The ad taken out by your opponent asks if you're a job creator or a job exporter. Let's have you answer that question for everyone.
Well, I'm in the cashmere sweater business, and the cashmere sweater knitting industry in this country died about 30 years ago. There hasn't been anybody in this country who could knit cashmere sweaters for 30 years. So if my opponent wants to place the blame of the demise of the cashmere industry at my feet when I was 14 years old, he's welcome to do it. It's just not true. So what I did was, when I got into the cashmere business 20 years ago, I started out in trading raw materials to manufacturers in the United States and all over the world. But we also quickly realized that the Chinese were quickly dominating the cashmere sweater business, and that we'd already seen the cashmere sweater business in the United States go away. So we looked at what we could do to create jobs in the United States. So I worked for a company in Woonsocket for 10 years, another textile company. I started my company 10 years ago in Burrillville in the basement of my house on Camp Dixie Road. Started out with one person, me. I've now grown it to 8 people in Burrillville. Half of my staff are Burrillville residents. We've set up our design, our administration, our customer service, our distribution, all out of a small facility on Chapel Street in Harrisville. Contrary to what my opponent says, I'm a job importer in Burrillville. I've created 8 full-time jobs with benefits, and depending on how this election goes on November 6th and who takes over the White House, I'm prepared to probably hire 1 or 2 more people in Burrillville.
All right, Mr. Keable, let's have you respond to that. I mean, is it a cheap shot to be putting that ad in there? I mean, have you called for legislation demanding that Hasbro make their toys in Pawtucket and not in China?
Well, I don't think I could call for legislation like that. That would really be more of a federal issue. And like Mr. Fox said, a lot of that will be decided on November 6th at the federal level. But the fact of the matter is, Mr. Fox has proclaimed himself to be a job creator. In fact, he imports all of his cashmere from China, where he spends an inordinate amount of his time. He's constantly in China, Central Asia, outside of the state, outside of the district, and you simply cannot represent the people of Burrillville and Gloucester from China.
Do you think that being a part-time legislator and having a full-time career where he's out of the country once in a while, that's in conflict? Is that what you're saying?
It's not in conflict. It makes being an effective legislator very difficult. People call you all the time, and it's very hard to be responsive to the people, and that is the number one duty of a legislator, is to be responsive to the people they represent.
How much time do you spend in China, Mr. Fox?
I go there twice a year.
And for how long?
About 9 or 10 days. I try to keep my trips as short as I can because I have a family. I've got 3 kids. Look, I've been in the business for 20 years. I know how to manage my schedule. You know, that's what I do, okay? My opponent claimed that I'm out of the country for weeks at a time. I put a counter ad in the bargain buyer that said I would invite anybody who wanted to come down to my office to look at my passport and look at the stamps in the passport and tell me where I've been anywhere out of country for weeks at a time. It's just not true. It's a blatant lie.
All right, Mr. Keable, do you want a final word on this subject?
And Mr. Keable never came down to check my passport.
Would you like to see his passport?
You know, I've been told by Republican leaders in town, many people that know Don Fox personally, the simple fact of the matter is, and I believe the people of Burrillville know this, he's out of the district in China
But
and
the
Central
point of
Asia
your
a
ad
lot.
wasn't that. The point of your ad was he's a job exporter because he's the tag on the sweater says made in China. Do you think that's something that's resonating with the people in your district, in Burrillville, in Gloucester, that's what's really top of mind for them right now?
Well, I think the people of Burrillville and Gloucester are concerned about their jobs and about unemployment. And I think everybody realizes a large portion of the problem, not just in Rhode Island, but in America generally, is our jobs being shipped to China. And the fact of the matter is Don Fox is part of the problem, not the solution.
All right, we're going to move on to a question from Ted Neese.
The bargain buyer for people at home who aren't from Burrillville is the very influential weekly up there. So I want to ask Mr. Fox, you've been highly critical of the redistricting plan that redrew House District 47 in a way that you say is favorable to Mr. Keable. But frankly, isn't that just the way the game is played? Every 10 years we redraw the maps and the party in charge, if Republicans were in charge, they do the same thing. Isn't it just sour grapes?
No, I wouldn't say it's sour grapes. I mean, and, you know, Representative Keable has admitted in the paper that it is a political process. You know, the problem goes beyond Keable-Fox. The problem is that we spent $750,000 on a consultant who has done nothing but provide political cover to Speaker Fox and Representative Keable so that they could go in and draw lines. If you look at what took place in District 47 in 2010 and you look at what was removed in this process, you look at the Harmony section of Gloucester where I beat Representative Keable 65 to 35%, completely removed. You look at the Oakland-Mapleville district of Burrillville, where I beat him by triple digits. That was almost carved completely out, okay? And it goes to the fact that if we're going to spend $750,000 on a consultant, but we're just going to let Speaker Fox, Representative Keable, and the leadership draw lines on a map, well, let's call a spade a spade. Let's save the $750,000 of taxpayer money.
Mr. Fox, what do you Mr. Keable, what do you think?
You know, I've heard a lot about redistricting for the past year, and the fact of the matter is my involvement in it has been greatly exaggerated. It was made very clear to me by Republican Minority Leader Brian Newberry very early on in the process that Don Fox did not care where those lines were, what the district looked like. He was going to run in District 47. And so it just didn't matter to me. I'd run against Mr. Fox once before and beat him, and I fully anticipated running against him. In fact, Leader Newberry introduced an amendment that would have put Mr. Fox's real house back in the district, and I voted for that amendment. I have no problem running.
But isn't the point that Speaker Fox, in fact, if anything, it's helpful to you, don't get you involved directly, but have him and his Chief of Staff, Frank Anzavino, very closely involved in this process, draw a district that is more favorable to you. You can vote against it, but it's still the new district.
The lines were drawn by an independent commission of senators and representatives, bipartisan, both Democrats and Republicans, and members of the public. I have never spoken, not once, with Speaker Fox or Frank Anzavino about redistricting, ever.
Do you think they thought about it, though?
I can't tell you.
You've never, you say you've been talking about it for a year, but
I
you've
can't
never
tell
asked
you.
them?
The lines were drawn by, Mr. Nisi, the lines were drawn by an independent commission
Isn't
of
that
senators.
inaccurate to call it an independent commission? It's controlled by the ruling Democratic Party at the General Assembly.
Well, it is a bipartisan commission, and it did include members of the public. And I did not sit on that commission, and they drew the lines, and I can't tell you what each one of them was thinking about the lines in Burrillville and Gloucester. But none of this mattered, since Mr. Fox was always going to run in District 47.
All right, we're going to give you another word in this, and then we'll move to a question
Well,
from Ian.
you know, when I went down and appeared before the commission and I pressed the consultant and asked him what's the logical reason for going from plans A and B, which made all the sense in the world. Those were actually logical drawings of lines. When they went to Plan C and eventually to Plan D, he could not give me an answer. When that consultant was pressed in committee, he could not provide a legitimate answer. It's political cover for a Democrat who is going to be facing a very difficult challenge in 2012.
All right,
Plain and simple.
to a question from Ian.
Mr. Keable, the House passed a controversial auto body bill in the last session. Critics, including your opponents, say it would have raised the cost of car insurance and was a favor for the auto body industry. It didn't go anywhere ultimately because Governor Chafee vetoed it, but why did you vote for it?
You know, Ian, it's not surprising that the insurance industry would say a bill they don't like is going to increase rates. And as you know, as a rank-and-file freshman representative, I don't get to decide which votes come to the House floor for a vote or not. If I had been deciding, I wouldn't have let that bill come to the floor for a vote. But I don't have that choice. And when a bill does come down for a vote, I can only analyze it by what's in the best interest
Why
of
do
the
you think it
people of
was a
Burrillville
good bill
and
for your
Gloucester.
constituents?
Because there's two things about that bill, one of which doesn't get talked about a lot, and that's the rate at which a car gets totaled. And for a lot of people with $2,000 to $4,000 cars, which are a lot of people in my district, that's not a very good rule. They can have their car taken away from them when they would prefer to have it fixed and returned to them. Secondly, we have 4 auto body shops in the district, 4 of them. So my opponent says he's for small business, but in fact he's for large insurance companies. I'm the one that took the tough vote, and that bill is a tough vote to protect small businesses and consumers in Burrillville.
Thank you. What do you say, Mr.
Well,
Fox?
look, in fact, I did my research on this. I went to the auto body shops. I didn't go to the auto body shop that Representative Keeble's family owns. They do own an auto body shop
No,
in
that's
town.
not true.
Nelson's Auto Body?
Nelson's Auto Body, we do not. Nelson's Auto Body Shop is not functioning. We do not own an auto body
It's
shop.
not
So what does that mean? Is it
mean,
closed?
It's defunct.
Well,
Yes.
I see people in there,
No,
though.
not me. My uncle owned an auto body shop.
Oh, I don't want to debate that. I went to the auto body
There's
shops
nothing
with the
to debate.
exception
It's
of
not-
his family's auto body shop, and I asked them about this. I sat down with them. I even called up Amica Insurance and said, can I come down and speak with you people about this? I did my research, and look, the bottom line is when repair costs are done in Rhode Island, there's 2 types. There's insurance related and there's non-insurance related. The non-insurance related, we actually have a vibrant industry in Rhode Island. We're actually below the national average, so if you get a strut job or a brake job, we're actually competitive for once. It's a different story when it's insurance related, where either depending on the rankings that you look at and the surveys that you look at, it's either number 1 or number 2 highest in the country. We pay the 7th highest auto insurance premium rates in the country. So you're looking at a bill that, and you say that you didn't, have any part of it. Didn't you sit on the committee that passed this down to the floor for a vote?
Mr. Keable?
With
And
Representative
Mr. Keable,
Petrarca?
did Representative Petrarca encourage you to support this bill?
No,
But you were on the committee that voted it to go to the floor.
I was on the
You
committee
approved
that-
it to go to the floor.
I was.
Okay, and you voted for it on the floor.
Yes, I did.
There's no doubt the insurance companies were not going to fight this. They made it clear we're not going to fight it. The only thing that would have resulted would have been them passing on those higher litigation costs to the consumer. So this bill would have resulted in higher auto insurance premiums. And I don't give Governor Chafee credit on much. I'll give him credit on this. He did veto it.
All right, gentlemen, we're going to have to take a break on this debate for now. When we come back, we're going to have a series of yes or no questions for the candidates, and they are State Representative Cale Keable and Republican challenger Don Fox. They're going for the race, and they're racing in House District 47. Stay with us. You're watching Newsmakers. Welcome back to Newsmakers. I'm Tim White. This week, a debate for House seat District 47. We have State Representative Cale Keable and Republican challenger Don Fox. I'm joined on the panel by WPRI.com reporter Ted Nesi, along with Rhode Island Public Radio's Ian Donis. Gentlemen, I'm going to ask you a series of yes or no questions. We want to cover a lot of ground, so let's try and keep it to that if we could. We'll start with you, Mr. Keable. Would you vote to legalize same-sex marriage in Rhode Island?
Yes.
And Mr. Fox?
Yes.
Mr. Fox, to you, should the state consider defaulting on the 38 Studios bond?
Now, that's a challenging question.
I'm saying considering. I'm not asking you for an up or down vote.
I think it should consider.
Okay. And Mr. Keable?
It's an option.
All right. Mr. Keable, to you, do you support Rhode Island's new voter ID law requiring people to present identification when they go to the polls?
I do. I'm looking forward to see how it works in this election.
Absolutely, yes.
And Mr. Fox, this is a question only for you because we know how Mr. Keable voted here. How would you have voted on the landmark pension reform bill?
I would have voted in favor of it.
Okay, and final question in this, Mr. Keable. Do you support binding arbitration for teachers?
Not as it was introduced in the last session.
And Mr. Fox? Okay, let's go to a question from Ted Nesi.
All right, Mr. Keable, House Speaker Fox has, kind of, not to be confused with Don Fox, I don't think
you.
they're related, right?
No relation.
House Speaker Gordon Fox has come under stinging criticism for a number of things, especially what happened with 38 Studios. Do you think he deserves another term as House Speaker?
I have no idea how the House Speaker's race is going to work out. I am focused only on my own race. As you've noted, this is a very hotly contested race. And I don't even know who the candidates are going to be for Speaker of the House.
Well, what will you look for in a Speaker then? Has Speaker Fox done a good job? How was he these 2 years?
Well, I can tell you what I did 2 years ago when I first got elected. There were 2 candidates for Speaker of the House. I met with both of them. I spoke extensively with both of them. I met with my constituents and asked for their input. And I made a decision based on what I thought was best for the taxpayers of Borough and Gloucester, and that is the exact same process.
And are you satisfied with the result you got for 2 years of Speaker Fox?
Well, it's impossible to know what the opposite result would have been.
But just to press you a little bit here, let's say Gordon Fox wins the election down there. Would you? It sounds like you're saying you would consider someone else as House Speaker.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Mr. Fox, Republicans are a tiny minority in the General Assembly, and if you're elected, you'll be on the outside of power looking in. Aren't the people in your district better off having a representative who's part of the team that's in charge of the place and might have a little more sway with the leadership?
Well, look, if the people in my district want someone who's going to vote with the Speaker 98.5% of the time, as Representative Keable has, he's their vote. If they want someone who's going to go down there and not vote with the Speaker and vote for the special interest, but who's going to go down there and work for taxpayers and work for small businesses, then yes, they should consider me, because I think there's going to be a larger number of Republicans in the House this year, along with some moderates and independents, and there are going to be fiscally conservative Democrats who are going to be willing to work with us to put a business-friendly, taxpayer-friendly Speaker in the House.
Mr. Fox, on your website, you say cutting taxes is the single best way to improve the jobs climate in Rhode Island. What taxes would you specifically cut, and what areas of government would you specifically cut to make up for the loss in spending?
Well, thanks for the question. And that's an important question, because there are 3 main taxation pillars that we need to look at. And any state that has done well economically and rode out this recession has looked at their personal income tax, their business income tax, or their sales tax. Those are the 3 that are crippling this state. We need to look at states that have tackled 1 or 2 of those, emulate the better practices of those states. For example, now, I like to look at New Hampshire. I was ridiculed in 2010 by my opponent for doing that. But there's a state with 30% more people, a 40% smaller state budget. Roads are in pristine condition. They have no sales tax. They have no personal income tax. Their unemployment rate is half of Rhode Island's. They're doing something right there. We can't tax ourselves.
Where would you cut spending to make up for this?
Well, let's look at some of the welfare programs. Their welfare per capita spending in New Hampshire is about 1/3 of Rhode Island's. Welfare and programs like that are meant to be a trampoline, rather, to bounce people back up and get them on their feet, not a mattress to lay down and stay on it generationally. And that's what we have in Rhode Island by and large. 1 in 5 people are on some form of public assistance in this state. We're not doing a good job. The government.
Let me stop you there. Mr. Keable, does Rhode Island have a excessive social safety net, as your opponent is suggesting?
I don't believe so, Ian. You know, Rhode Island is, there's a big difference between New Hampshire and Rhode Island, and that is that New Hampshire is largely a rural state, and Rhode Island is largely an urban state. It's mostly Providence, Pawtucket.
Okay. Would you support raising the state income tax on people who earn more than $250,000 a year?
Look, Ian, I'm not for raising taxes on anybody. That's not the way to go in Rhode Island. However, if we have to raise taxes anywhere, and we did run a surplus this past year, so it's not looking like that's in the immediate future. But if we had to raise taxes anywhere, it should be raised on folks like my opponent, Don Fox, who are making over $250,000 a year. That's where, not the middle class. We should raise it on high-income people.
But Representative Keable, you voted for every tax and fee increase that was put in front of you for 2 straight years.
How can you sit there? That is incorrect. That's a lie.
Okay. We can talk about fee increases for National Grid. We can talk about the door groomers. We can talk about the tour companies. We can talk about the taxes on beverages.
We eliminated the taxes for tour companies. We rejected the Chafee proposals for $165 million on taxes on hundreds of items, including home heating oil. We rejected the governor's proposal on raising the meals and beverage tax. I personally voted
Everybody
against.
objected to those.
Voted
Mr. Fox,
against.
please.
I personally voted against putting taxes on non-prescription drugs. I've had 2 kidney transplants. I don't want taxes on medicine. I voted against taxing the taxi cab companies. So for Mr. Fox to say that I voted for taxes because I voted for an overall budget package that included some taxes misses the point.
I need to
30
jump in
seconds,
there. I need to
Mr.
jump in
Fox.
there. You, when it came down to voting, you voted against articles in the budget. But we all know that the final vote that matters is voting for the budget. And you voted to raise taxes on non-prescription drugs. You voted for everything that I've written about in the bargain buyer is factual. You voted for them. You can't do the smoke and mirrors and hide behind and say, I oppose Governor Cheney. Everyone opposed the meal tax increase. That's like saying I oppose puppy abuse. Everybody is opposed to it. You voted on every tax and fee increase in the 2 budgets in 2011 and 2012 by virtue of your vote yes on those budgets.
Final word, Mr. Keable.
With all due respect, Mr. Fox, it's you that can't have it both ways. When you vote on a budget, you vote on the entire $8 billion budget. Individual legislators do not get line item. You can't pick and choose in a budget. I like this, but I don't like that. So you take the whole thing. So if you want to follow Mr. Fox's philosophy, he would have voted against the budget. So that means he would have voted against continued funding to Zambrano. Direct taxpayer relief that the Republican Town Council in Gloucester asked us to provide that was in the budget. Unfunded mandates. Mr. Fox says he's against unfunded mandates. Well, what if a budget, as both of these budgets did, contains relief from unfunded mandates? Mr. Fox, by his own theory, would have voted against those things. It's him that can't
There
have
wasn't
it
a
both
lot of
ways.
unfunded
Okay, we're going to
mandate
move on,
relief.
Mr. Fox, Mr. Keable. We're going to move on to 38 Studios. Mr. Keable, should there have been legislative hearings by now over the 38 Studios collapse?
Absolutely.
Okay, so you would. Why haven't you called for any hearings, or have I missed it?
Well, I think that would happen from leadership, which I'm not a part of, or from the Finance Committee, which
It
I'm
doesn't
also not a
prevent you
part of.
from using the megaphone of your position.
I have had no louder megaphone than Newsmakers, so consider me calling for it now.
Okay, very good. Mr. Fox, do you think by now there should have
Absolutely.
been... Let me ask to you first and then back to you. I've spoken with Colonel Stephen O'Donnell of the Rhode Island State Police, and he told me that it would hurt their investigation to call for these legislative hearings. Are you saying Colonel O'Donnell is wrong?
No, absolutely not. Look, I'm not involved in the specifics of how this voted, and I'll hand it to Representative Keable. He didn't vote on 38 Studios either.
Right.
Okay, but the fact of the matter is, this is part and parcel of what's wrong with Rhode Island politics, this pick and choose of businesses and industries. Rather than creating a business environment that's attractive to all businesses, the state is forced to go out and try to create successes, and every time they do it, we pay the bill.
Colonel O'Donnell says it's a bad idea right now, but you're calling for the hearings.
Well, I think we should give some deference to our law enforcement officials to make sure they can do their job.
Okay, question from Ted.
You know, Newsmakers ratings are very, very high in Burrowville, of course, but we also have a lot of viewers outside that area who aren't that familiar. It's a rural area. People might not get up there. So I want to ask each of you, it's not a trick question. First with you, Mr. Keable, what's the one thing you'd like people in other parts of the state, more populous areas, to know about Burrowville and Gloucester, District 47?
Burrowville and Gloucester is a wonderful place to live. We have a lot of Great Lakes up there. It's a good place to have a business, as Mr. Fox does, as my family did for 60 years in Burrowville. It's an excellent place. I love going to bed in Burrowville every night, putting my head on that pillow, and I love waking up in Burrowville.
And what's the biggest challenge there? What's the biggest challenge to the community?
The biggest challenge to the community is we are heavily reliant on, and have been for some time, on Zambrano Hospital, which was built 100 years ago as a tuberculosis hospital. And the number one job for any state rep, and I think I've done a wonderful job at this, is protecting Zambrano, funding for Zambrano, because so many of our jobs are located there.
Mr. Fox, same question to you. What would you like people outside the area to know about your area?
Well, I would echo Representative Keable's sentiments. I mean, it is a wonderful place. You know, when we look at the overall business rankings for Rhode Island, there's always the negatives, but the positives are quality of life, and that's part and parcel of what's correct with Burrowville and Gloucester. It is the quality of life, and when I go around talking to people, despite the complaints about lack of jobs and unemployment and taxation, they love where they live up there. And a lot of them, their biggest complaint is that why aren't we attracting more businesses in town? You know, my biggest complaint there is that we've got a very unfriendly town council that's been turning businesses away. We're hoping to change that on November 6th, so I hope we can. We have 2 industrial parks that are empty. We need to attract businesses to those industrial parks.
Gentlemen, we have just about a minute left in this show, so very briefly, Mr. Keable, the General Assembly passed passed changes to the Access to Public Records Act, the first time in 14 years. One thing that was missing, and a lot of good government groups as well as the media think should be there, is a section that makes emails to and from public officials, but excluding constituents, make those a public record. Many states have this, Rhode Island does not. Should emails be public record?
Yes.
Okay, and Mr. Fox,
Yes.
I'm going to ask both of you for a letter grade for some public officials here. Mr. Fox, what is your letter grade for Governor Lincoln Chafee?
D+.
D+. And Mr. Keable?
D.
You're giving him a lower letter grade than why? Why are you giving him a lower letter grade?
Well, I think anybody that spends government resources and time protecting a known murderer is a real problem.
Jason Flew.
Right. I disagree completely with the governor doing an end around on the legislature on in-state tuition, which I was cited in the Providence Journal as opposing in-state tuition for illegal immigrants. And I think the governor didn't do enough on 38 studios.
Letter grade for House Speaker Gordon Fox, quickly.
C-.
And letter grade for House Speaker
B-.
Gordon Fox. B-. Okay, this was our 9th and final debate. Representative Cale Keable and Republican challenger Don Fox. We're glad to have you for our final debate. If you missed any of it or you want to get ready for Tuesday's elections, you can catch it all online, WPRI.com. For Ted Nisi, Ian Donis, I'm Tim White. We will see you next week on Newsmakers.
Thank you.